Hello everybody, I just wanted to say a few quick words about the concept of a global equality of carbon emissions output. In 2004, every person in the USA was accountable for production of roughly 5.5 metric tons of carbon emissions. In comparison, the average Indian person's production of carbon emissions amounted to being about 0.34 metric tons. The USA today has a population of 330 million people. India, on the other hand, has a population of 1.2 billion people. Now, if each one of those 1.2 billion people to produce 5.5 metric tons of carbon emissions just the same as Americans did in 2004, could you imagine the impact of such an increase in carbon dioxide in our atmosphere? And that's just India too. What if China, with a population of 1.3 billion people, is similarly to emit such a staggering amount of carbon emissions? Consider the environmental effects of China and India's combined total of 2.5 billion people, each putting out 5.5 metric tons of carbon emissions every year. And there is no logical reason to stop this thought experiment with the heavyweights of China and India either. What if every person in the world was to produce 5.61 metric tons of carbon emissions every year? What sort of planet would our comfort and convenience have forged out for us, for our children to come, and for all other species of life on this planet? What's been highlighted here is that we can't possibly all live like Americans, emitting 5.61 metric tons of carbon every year. But if they can, why can't others? No reason at all, says Singer. Singer's principle of equal shares per capita of emissions is grounded in the indisputable fact that our atmosphere does not have an infinite capacity to take on our emissions, and since our atmosphere is a global resource, it's logical to say that nobody has any right or entitlement to a greater share of our atmosphere's capacity to take on our emissions than any other person does. Or, in plainer terms, everybody has the same right to producing the same levels of emissions as every other person on the planet. In order to limit our emissions enough to meet the Kyoto Protocol rise figure of a safe 2 degrees or less of global temperature rise, Singer proposed the figure of 1 metric ton of carbon emissions per capita as a global per capita entitlement. As Singer himself puts it, this becomes a basic equitable entitlement for every human being on the planet. This could likely be achieved, to my mind, through a cap and share solution. Though cutting our emissions to meet a 1 ton per capita requirement entails hefty cutbacks to the opulence of our lifestyle, this opulence was never ethical to begin with. Let this sacrifice be the first step in taking action to identify as part of a global community. Thank you.